Let's talk about the match itself. It goes 15 minutes and 59 seconds using the old school death style match, where it is, of course, the Texas death match. But the deal here is falls don't count, and if it continues until one man can't answer the bell after a 30-second rest period, when you're going into this match, what are you, besides trying to accidentally end it early, is there something else you're trying to accomplish?
Should we address why I wanted to end my career in that match? Because of all the reasons I talked about. Get to the promised land, and it's not, there's no end game. There's no benefit to having gotten there. That there is no pay raise.
Yes.
There is no pay main event in my future. And at that point, I am beaten up. I am beaten. I was trying to think. I was referencing. Going back, I had a discussion with Huey, my son, about basketball and the NBA Finals with the Celtics, and NBA Eastern Finals, Celtics and Heat, and the Celtics were shooting like 20% from three. And the Celtics coach was asked, given that, no threes weren't dropping, is there anything you do differently? He said, no. And so I'm thinking, I don't know if I expressed it to you. I'm like, I remember, but the idea was in my mind. I'm in Savannah, Georgia with Sting doing a Falls Count Anywhere match. It's where Dusty said, we're going to make you the King of the Falls Count Anywhere match, which means I never won them, but I was always advertised as the King of the Falls Count Anywhere match. I think I'm going to get away with doing some funny stuff because you can do some funny things in the Falls. Triple H, Beal tossing, me throwing Triple H with a pair of salad tongs by the nose. You can get away with some funny stuff. But as I got a plunger and Sting used, hey, let's do this, Sting, this will be fun. Never called him Steve up until like 2010. He got the plunger on me, and I'm just not getting the feeling that they're buying the funny stuff. So we have to regroup, do a much more serious, hard-hitting match. I remember Colette was on the road with me. I think this is maybe Dewey's either a baby or she's very pregnant with Dewey. And I'm literally crawling down the hall on my hands and knees to get to my room because I'm banged up that badly. And I'm thinking, if I can change the game plan during a house show in Savannah,
right, certainly
you can change the game plan when it's not working. So I'm just saying you could change things up. I don't know how this relates to what I was talking about, the frustration I felt. But I did have other gears I could go to when I could do fun matches occasionally, even in WCW. There was a lot of fun stuff. I detailed one of the matches that me and Sullivan had against the Nasties, where Harley lectured me afterwards for being too silly out there, including the cup I thought was a full beer. I thought the reason the guy was like, no, trying to protest against me grabbing his cup was he didn't want to waste a beer. And then as I throw it, it's in mid-throw, and I see it, and I was like, that's not an amber-colored Pilsner beer. This is
tobacco spit.
This is 18 ounces tobacco juice, and it's like in Nobby's eyes, coming out of his nostrils. So there was some silly stuff I did. But I thought there was a time and a place for the really physical stuff, a strong style. But on that night in New Orleans, I intended to end my career because I was just so frustrated. I had the Lloyd's of London policy. Granted, it wasn't going to be a huge sum of money because I was only making $150. But you're talking about wrestler after wrestler who'd been given big sums of money, all of them from Minnesota. Maybe that was the deal. I wasn't from Minnesota. But it was Road Warrior Animal, it was Kurt Hennig, it was Ricky Steamboat. I mean, just over and over. I was like, how can I possibly ever wrestle? Rick Rude got it. How can I ever wrestle again if I'm on this guy's back? And he drops backwards and kicks his feet up, drops backward. He's 450 pounds, wooden ramp. No way can I ever wrestle again, which is what I wanted at that point, to never wrestle again.
Well, Eric Bischoff even wrote about this day in his book. He talked about maybe you had a different idea. Quote, that was the precursor for Cactus Jack leaving WCW. Cactus was becoming not only a danger to himself, but in the opinion of WCW Legal, was providing a significant amount of litigation exposure because of the things he wanted to do. It was over the top. Every week it was something crazier and crazier and crazier, and we couldn't let it happen. In addition to probably other things, I never talked to Mick about this, and maybe we will someday. That was the straw that broke the camel's back with WCW and Mick. He wanted to become more physical and more violent, bloodier and more over the top. WCW was going a different direction. But this is all when he was asked, is it true that you wanted to jump off of a balcony at Halloween Havoc? And that you were shut down for that. Do you remember, I know we did the big swisher spot or whatever we want to call it with you on Vader's back on the ramp. Do you remember suggesting to anyone, what if I jumped off of that in regard to a balcony?
I liked going off the high stuff. Uncle Conrad, I did like it. Yeah. I thought I specifically brought that up September of 94. But it was like the dream was always to drop an elbow off the TV truck. Not just because it'd be a cool bump, but because of the way it could be filmed.
Yeah, coming down.
Onto a hood of a car, you relax the shocks a little bit. It looks like I'm sailing into your living room. So yeah, I did. I can't, listen, that's a very legitimate reason. I don't remember anyone sitting down and telling me that. I'm not saying they did not do that. When I heard that from Eric, not from me directly, but through the book and hearing him talk about it on the podcast, I was like, okay, that's a legitimate concern. That's a legitimate concern. But this is the most griping I think I've ever done on an episode. I want to make it clear that if everything had worked out like I hoped it would that night, leading up to it, where I wouldn't enter the match with the this end game of hopefully never wrestling again. Even if things had gone perfectly, they could not have worked out as well as they did.
That's right.
So I think, in one of my books I said, I'm not sure if everything happens for a reason or if the choices we make based on the circumstances we find ourselves in go on to define who we are as human beings. And so I did have some circumstances that I thought were difficult. And I think the way I addressed them, by going out, by giving my notice, by going out, working harder, making myself a valuable commodity.
Winning the tag titles on notice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then they treated me well. They didn't job me out, right? That's
a vote of confidence.
It is. It was really nice of them to do that. They treated me well. I didn't give them 2 weeks' notice. I gave them 2 months.
Yeah.
I just said, when I said I'm not going to resign. I know Eric even asked me at DDP's Christmas party just a few months after I left. Did we let you go, or did you? I said, I told you guys, I wasn't. Resign. Now, not one time did anyone sit me down and ask me if I would reconsider. But they pushed me.
Yes.
They gave me the tag titles with Kevin. I was able to do an angle with Kevin on the way out. I was able to do a Loser Leave Town that had a push to it. I was able to leave Kevin Sullivan laying, during the angle leading up to it. Considering I traveled 40 straight hours to make it to Roanoke, Virginia, and only got to the event 10 minutes before we went on the air. And I think we discussed this. Kevin wasn't big about going over spots anyway. And I was like, Kevin, I want you to slam me off the off the second rope to the concrete. And my music's playing, and he goes, brother, do I stand on the ring apron or the floor? I go, Kevin, if you're standing on the floor, you'll never reach me. And out I go.